Chapter 1: The Nature of Belief. What is belief? Belief is one of the most fundamental aspects of human cognition, playing a crucial role in how we understand the world and navigate our lives. At its core, belief can be defined as the mental acceptance that a particular statement, proposition, or state of affairs is true. Unlike mere opinions, which may be held lightly and changed easily, beliefs are often deeply held and can significantly influence behavior and thought. Philosophically, belief is distinguished from related concepts such as knowledge and opinion. Knowledge is traditionally defined as justified true belief, a belief that is not only held but also true and supported by adequate justification. In contrast, a belief does not necessarily require justification or truth. One can believe something that is false or unsupported by evidence, which differentiates belief from knowledge. Belief can also be differentiated from opinion in terms of conviction. Opinions are often seen as subjective views or preferences that can vary from person to person without necessarily being grounded in objective truth. Beliefs, however, are typically held with a sense of conviction that what is believed corresponds to reality. For example, believing that the Earth orbits the Sun is not simply an opinion, but a conviction grounded in scientific evidence. Moreover, beliefs are tied to our understanding of reality and shape how we interpret our experiences. They act as mental models that help us make sense of the world. These models influence how we process new information, interact with others, and make decisions. For instance, if someone believes that people are generally trustworthy, they are likely to approach social interactions with openness and a willingness to cooperate. Conversely, if someone believes that others are out to deceive them, they may be more suspicious and guarded in their interactions. The importance of belief in human life cannot be overstated. Beliefs guide our actions, shape our perceptions, and form the basis of our understanding of the world. They are not merely passive states of mind, but active forces that influence our behavior and decisions. Understanding the nature of belief is therefore crucial for understanding human thought and action. Belief formation. The process of belief formation is complex and multifaceted, involving a combination of cognitive, emotional, and social factors. Beliefs are not formed in isolation. They arise from our interactions with the world, our experiences, and the information we receive. This section explores the key factors that contribute to the formation of beliefs: evidence and experience. At the heart of belief formation is the role of evidence and experience. Beliefs are often seen as responses to the evidence we encounter in our lives. When we are presented with information that aligns with our existing knowledge and understanding, we are likely to form a belief based on that information. For example, when we see dark clouds in the sky, we might form the belief that it will rain soon. Our personal experiences also play a significant role in shaping our beliefs. The things we witness, the events we live through, and the outcomes we observe all contribute to the formation of our beliefs. For instance, if someone has consistently had positive experiences with a particular brand of product, they are likely to believe that the brand is reliable and trustworthy. Conversely, negative experiences can lead to the formation of beliefs that something is unreliable or undesirable. Cognitive processes. Belief formation is also deeply influenced by cognitive processes. Human beings are equipped with cognitive faculties that allow us to process information, reason about it, and arrive at conclusions. These faculties include perception, memory, attention, and reasoning, all of which play a role in how we form beliefs. Perception allows us to gather information from the world around us, providing the raw data that we use to form beliefs. Memory helps us retain and recall past experiences, which we use to evaluate new information and make decisions. Attention allows us to focus on relevant information while filtering out distractions. Reasoning enables us to analyze information, draw inferences, and arrive at conclusions. These cognitive processes are not infallible. They are subject to various biases and errors that can influence belief formation. For example, confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out and give more weight to information that confirms our existing beliefs, can lead to the formation of beliefs that are not entirely accurate. Social influence. Belief formation is not solely an individual process. It is also shaped by social influences. We are social beings, and our interactions with others play a significant role in shaping our beliefs. From a young age, we are exposed to the beliefs of our parents, peers, and the broader society. These influences can have a powerful impact on the beliefs we form. Cultural values and group identity are all factors that contribute to belief formation. For example, if someone grows up in a culture that highly values education, they are likely to develop a belief in the importance of education. Similarly, if a person identifies strongly with a particular social or political group, they may adopt the beliefs of that group as part of their identity. The role of authority figures and experts is also significant in belief formation. People often rely on the expertise of others when forming beliefs about complex or specialized topics. For instance, many people believe in the efficacy of vaccines based on the recommendations of medical professionals and public health authorities. Emotional and psychological factors. Emotions and psychological states can also influence belief formation. Our emotional responses to events and situations can shape our beliefs about those events. For instance, if someone experiences fear in a particular situation, they may develop a belief that the situation is dangerous, even if there is no objective evidence to support that belief. Psychological factors, such as self-esteem and identity, can also play a role in belief formation. People may form beliefs that align with their self-concept or that reinforce their sense of identity. For example, someone with a strong sense of self-worth may be more likely to believe in their own abilities and potential. Involuntariness of belief. One of the key characteristics of belief is its involuntary nature. Unlike decisions or actions, which we can consciously choose to make, beliefs are often formed without deliberate effort. We find ourselves believing certain things based on the evidence, experiences, and influences we encounter, rather than actively choosing to hold those beliefs. This section explores the involuntariness of belief and the philosophical arguments that support this view. The involuntary nature of belief. Beliefs are not typically formed through an act of will. Rather, they arise as a result of our interactions with the world. When we are presented with compelling evidence or a convincing argument, we may find ourselves believing something, even if we did not intend to form that belief. For example, if we are shown clear evidence that contradicts a previously held belief, we may involuntarily change our belief in response to the new information. This involuntariness is tied to the nature of belief as a response to perceived truth. To believe something is to regard it as true, and truth is not something we can arbitrarily choose. We cannot simply decide to believe that the sky is green if all our experiences and evidence point to the fact that the sky is blue. Belief, in this sense, is a recognition of what we perceive to be true, rather than a choice we make. Philosophical arguments for involuntariness. Several philosophical arguments support the view that belief is involuntary. One such argument is based on the idea that belief is a response to evidence. If beliefs are formed in response to evidence, then they cannot be voluntarily controlled in the same way that actions can. Just as we cannot choose to feel pain when we touch a hot stove, we cannot choose to believe something in the absence of evidence that supports it. Another argument comes from the nature of truth and belief. Beliefs are closely tied to our understanding of truth. To believe something is to accept it as true. If beliefs were entirely voluntary, this would imply that we could choose what is true, which contradicts the objective nature of truth. Truth is not subject to our will. It is something we discover or recognize, and our beliefs are shaped accordingly. The concept of doxastic involuntarism is often invoked in these discussions. Doxastic involuntarism is the view that beliefs cannot be directly controlled by the will. Proponents of this view argue that while we can influence our beliefs indirectly, by seeking out information, reflecting on evidence, or engaging in critical thinking, we cannot simply choose to believe something at will. This involuntary nature of belief is seen as a fundamental aspect of how our minds interact with the world. The role of self-deception. While belief is generally considered involuntary, there are cases where people engage in self-deception, convincing themselves to believe something despite contrary evidence. Self-deception involves a complex interplay of cognitive biases, emotional motivations, and psychological defenses, allowing individuals to hold beliefs that may not be fully justified. Self-deception can be seen as a way of protecting oneself from uncomfortable truths or maintaining a positive self-image. For example, Someone might deceive themselves into believing that they are more successful or competent than they actually are in order to bolster their self esteem. While self deception shows that beliefs can be influenced by psychological factors, it also highlights the tension between belief and evidence. Even in cases of self deception, the process is often unconscious and not fully under the individual's control, further underscoring the involuntary nature of belief. Practical implications of involuntariness. The involuntariness of belief has important practical implications, particularly in areas such as education, persuasion, and ethical decision-making. Understanding that beliefs are not simply a matter of choice can help us appreciate the complexity of belief formation and the importance of evidence and reasoning in shaping our views. In education, for instance, the goal is often to present students with evidence and arguments that will lead them to form accurate and well-founded beliefs. Recognizing that beliefs cannot be imposed or chosen at will highlights the importance of fostering critical thinking and encouraging students to engage with evidence. In persuasion, understanding the involuntary nature of belief can lead to more effective strategies for changing minds. Rather than simply telling someone to believe something, persuasive efforts should focus on presenting compelling evidence and addressing the individual's existing beliefs and concerns. Ethically, the involuntariness of belief raises questions about responsibility for one's beliefs. If beliefs are not entirely under our control, to what extent can we be held accountable for them? This question touches on issues of moral responsibility, freedom of thought, and the ethics of belief. Conclusion to Chapter 1. Belief is a complex and multifaceted aspect of human cognition, deeply intertwined with our perceptions, experiences, and interactions with the world. Understanding the nature of belief, the processes by which beliefs are formed, and the involuntary nature of belief is crucial for navigating the philosophical and practical implications of belief in our lives. In this chapter, we have explored the definition of belief, its distinction from related concepts, and the various factors that contribute to belief formation. We have also examined the involuntariness of belief, highlighting the role of evidence, cognitive processes, and social influences in shaping our beliefs. As we move forward in this book, we will delve deeper into the concept of believing at will, examining the arguments for and against the possibility of voluntarily choosing our beliefs. Chapter 2. The concept of believing at will. What does it mean to believe at will? The concept of believing at will refers to the idea that a person can choose their beliefs voluntarily, similar to how they might choose to perform an action or make a decision. This notion challenges the traditional view of belief as something that is involuntary and based on evidence. To believe at will would mean that a person could decide to believe in something, regardless of the evidence for or against it. Belief, desire, and wishful thinking. A key distinction must be made between belief, desire, and wishful thinking. Desire refers to what we want to be true, while belief concerns what we actually accept as true. Wishful thinking occurs when our desires influence our beliefs, often leading us to believe something because we want it to be true, rather than because it is supported by evidence. Believing at will differs from wishful thinking in that it suggests a conscious choice to believe, rather than an unconscious influence of desire on belief. However, this distinction raises questions about the feasibility of such a choice. Can one genuinely believe something simply by deciding to, or does belief necessarily depend on evidence and conviction? Examples and thought experiments. Philosophers have used various thought experiments to explore the concept of believing at will. One famous example is the idea of trying to believe that the Earth is flat. Even if one were to decide to adopt this belief, it would be nearly impossible to do so genuinely, given the overwhelming evidence against it. This suggests that belief is not something that can be willed into existence, but rather something that arises from a process of reasoning and evidence evaluation. Another thought experiment might involve a person deciding to believe in the existence of a fictional character, such as Santa Claus, as an adult. Despite any conscious effort to adopt this belief, the person would likely struggle to genuinely accept it as true, knowing that it contradicts their understanding of reality. These examples illustrate the challenges inherent in the concept of believing at will and set the stage for a deeper exploration of its philosophical implications. Philosophical origins. The idea of believing at will has its roots in various philosophical traditions, where it has been both proposed and contested. This section explores the historical background of the concept, tracing its origins and the key debates that have shaped its development. Early philosophical debates. The concept of believing at will can be traced back to discussions in ancient philosophy, particularly in the works of the Stoics, who emphasized the role of the will in shaping one's life and character. However, the Stoics primarily focused on the will's role in actions and emotions, rather than beliefs. The notion of choosing one's beliefs was not a central concern in their philosophy. In the medieval period, the issue of will and belief became more prominent in theological debates. For example, discussions about faith and reason often touched on whether belief in religious doctrines could be a matter of will or required divine grace. These debates laid the groundwork for later philosophical explorations of voluntary belief. Modern philosophical perspectives. The modern philosophical discussion of believing at will can be seen in the works of figures like René Descartes, who explored the relationship between the will and the intellect. Descartes argued that while we have control over what we focus on and what we assent to, the act of believing itself is not entirely voluntary. Our will can guide our inquiry and influence our judgments, but ultimately, belief is constrained by the evidence presented to the intellect. Another significant contribution comes from David Hume, who argued that beliefs are not subject to the will, but are instead formed by habits of thought and experience. Hume emphasized the role of custom and experience in shaping beliefs, suggesting that belief formation is a passive process, not an active choice. These philosophical perspectives highlight the ongoing tension between the idea of voluntary belief and the recognition that beliefs are often formed in response to evidence and experience, rather than through an act of will. Contemporary perspectives. In contemporary philosophy, the concept of believing at will continues to be a subject of debate, particularly in the fields of epistemology and philosophy of mind. Modern philosophers have expanded on the ideas of their predecessors, incorporating insights from psychology and cognitive science. Philosophical arguments. Some contemporary philosophers, such as William Alston, argue that belief is fundamentally passive and not under direct voluntary control. Alston suggests that while we can influence our beliefs indirectly through seeking out evidence, reflection, and reasoning, we cannot simply choose to believe something without adequate evidence. Others, like Pascal Engel, have explored the idea of doxastic voluntarism, which proposes that some beliefs might be subject to voluntary control in certain contexts. However, Engel and others acknowledge the limitations of this view, noting that even if we can influence our beliefs, the extent of this influence is constrained by the evidence available to us. Psychological insights. Psychological research has provided additional insights into the nature of belief and its relationship to the will. Studies in cognitive psychology have shown that belief formation is influenced by a variety of factors, including cognitive biases, emotional states, and social influences. These findings suggest that while we may have some control over the process of belief formation, much of it is unconscious and automatic, challenging the idea of believing at will. Moreover, research on cognitive dissonance, the discomfort experienced when holding conflicting beliefs, indicates that people are motivated to resolve dissonance by changing their beliefs. However, this process is not entirely voluntary, as it often occurs unconsciously and is driven by the desire to reduce psychological discomfort. Chapter 3. Arguments against believing at will. Involuntariness argument. The involuntariness argument posits that beliefs are not subject to direct voluntary control because they are responses to evidence and truth. This view is rooted in the understanding that beliefs arise naturally from the cognitive process of evaluating information, rather than from an act of will. Why belief cannot be voluntary. Beliefs are considered involuntary because they are typically formed when an individual is convinced by evidence or reasoning. For example, if someone sees a tree fall during a storm, they are likely to believe that the wind caused the tree to fall. This belief is formed automatically as a result of the evidence presented by the situation, rather than through a deliberate choice to believe. Philosophers argue that because beliefs are tied to evidence and truth, They cannot be willed into existence without corresponding evidence. The mind automatically evaluates information and forms beliefs based on what seems most likely to be true. This process is largely outside of conscious control, making it difficult, if not impossible, to believe something purely by deciding to do so. Critiques and defenses of the involuntariness argument. Critics of the involuntariness argument may point to cases where people seem to choose their beliefs, particularly in situations involving self-deception or motivated reasoning. However, defenders of the involuntariness argument counter that even in these cases, the belief is not truly voluntary. Rather, the individual is unconsciously influenced by desires or emotions, which shape their perception of evidence. Another critique is that people can sometimes choose to engage with certain types of evidence or avoid others, thereby influencing their beliefs indirectly. While this is true, defenders of the involuntariness argument maintain that the final act of believing is still not under direct voluntary control. One cannot simply will oneself to believe without being convinced by the evidence. Epistemic integrity argument. The epistemic integrity argument contends that belief should be closely aligned with truth and evidence. If people could believe at will, this would undermine the integrity of belief as a truth-oriented mental state, leading to self-deception and intellectual dishonesty. The connection between belief and truth. Beliefs are typically seen as mental states that aim at truth. To believe something is to accept it as true, and this acceptance is generally based on evidence or reasoning. If belief were subject to voluntary control, people could choose to believe things without regard to truth or evidence, which would compromise the very nature of belief. For example, if someone could choose to believe that they are immune to all diseases despite medical evidence to the contrary, this belief would be disconnected from reality. Such a belief would not be based on truth or evidence, but on a desire to avoid anxiety or fear. This undermines the epistemic integrity of belief, as it no longer serves its primary function of representing reality accurately. The risk of self-deception. If people could believe at will, there would be a significant risk of self-deception, where individuals convince themselves to believe things that are not true simply because they want them to be true. This self-deception could lead to harmful consequences, both for the individual and for society as a whole. For instance, someone might choose to believe in a conspiracy theory despite overwhelming evidence against it because it aligns with their pre-existing biases or desires. This kind of voluntary belief undermines the pursuit of truth and can contribute to the spread of misinformation and irrational thinking. Practical impossibility argument. The practical impossibility argument highlights the difficulties in trying to believe something at will, even when there is a strong desire to do so. This argument suggests that belief is not a matter of choice, but rather a result of being convinced by evidence or reasoning. Case studies and thought experiments. Consider a person who tries to believe that they can fly by jumping off a building. Despite any efforts to convince themselves of this belief, their knowledge of gravity and previous experiences will likely prevent them from genuinely believing it. This demonstrates the practical impossibility of believing at will, as the mind cannot easily override deeply held knowledge or evidence. Another example involves trying to believe in a statement that directly contradicts one's experiences, such as believing that snow is hot. Even if someone desperately wants to believe this, the evidence of their senses and prior knowledge will make it practically impossible to adopt such a belief genuinely. Challenges in daily life. In everyday life, people often encounter situations where they wish they could believe something different, such as believing in the success of a risky venture or the trustworthiness of a dubious person. However, the practical impossibility of changing beliefs at will often means that people must grapple with uncertainty, doubt, and the weight of evidence. This argument suggests that while people may wish to control their beliefs, the practical realities of how beliefs are formed, through evidence, experience, and reasoning, make it nearly impossible to believe at will in most cases. Chapter 4. Arguments for believing at will. Influence of desire and emotion. Proponents of the idea that people can believe at will argue that desire and emotion can play a powerful role in belief formation. They suggest that, in some cases, people might be able to influence their beliefs by aligning them with their desires and emotions. The power of positive thinking. One area where the influence of desire on belief is often highlighted is in the concept of positive thinking. Advocates of positive thinking argue that by choosing to adopt a positive outlook and focusing on optimistic beliefs, individuals can improve their mental and physical health, increase their chances of success, and lead more fulfilling lives. For example, someone might choose to believe that they will succeed in a challenging task, even if the odds are against them. This belief, motivated by the desire for success, can influence their behavior and increase their likelihood of achieving their goals. In this sense, the desire for a positive outcome can lead to the formation of a belief that supports that outcome. Emotion-driven beliefs. Emotions can also play a significant role in belief formation. When people are emotionally invested in a particular outcome or idea, they may be more likely to adopt beliefs that align with their emotions, even in the absence of strong evidence. For instance, someone who deeply loves another person may choose to believe in their loyalty and trustworthiness, even if there are reasons to doubt it. This belief is influenced by the emotional attachment to the person and the desire to maintain a positive relationship. While these examples suggest that desire and emotion can influence belief, they do not necessarily prove that belief is entirely voluntary. Instead, they highlight the complex interplay between desire and belief, suggesting that while beliefs may be influenced by these factors, they are not entirely under conscious control. Pragmatic arguments. Pragmatic arguments for believing at will focus on the practical benefits that certain beliefs can bring, regardless of their truth. This approach is often associated with philosophical pragmatism, which emphasizes the utility of beliefs in guiding action and achieving desired outcomes. William James and the Will to Believe. Philosopher William James famously argued in his essay, The Will to Believe, that, in some cases, it is justifiable to adopt a belief without sufficient evidence if doing so has practical benefits. James suggested that in situations where evidence is lacking, but a decision must be made, it is permissible to believe at will if the belief has the potential to lead to positive outcomes. For example, James argued that religious faith could be an instance where believing at will is justified. If a person is faced with the decision of whether to adopt a religious belief that offers comfort, moral guidance, and a sense of purpose, and if there is no conclusive evidence for or against the belief, James argued that it is reasonable to choose to believe. Belief as a tool for success. Another pragmatic argument for believing at will is that certain beliefs can be instrumental in achieving success, even if they are not strictly based on evidence. For instance, athletes often adopt beliefs in their abilities and chances of winning, which can motivate them to train harder and perform better. These beliefs may not be entirely grounded in reality, but they serve a practical purpose in enhancing performance. Similarly, entrepreneurs may choose to believe in the potential success of a new venture, even in the face of uncertainty and risk. This belief can drive them to take bold actions, secure funding, and persist through challenges, ultimately increasing their chances of success. Pragmatic arguments suggest that in certain contexts, believing at will can be a rational choice, especially when the belief has practical benefits and there is no decisive evidence against it. However, these arguments also raise questions about the relationship between belief, truth, and utility, and whether it is ethical to adopt beliefs solely for their practical advantages. Role of autonomy and freedom. The concept of autonomy and freedom plays a central role in arguments for believing at will. Proponents of this view argue that the ability to choose one's beliefs is an expression of personal autonomy and intellectual freedom. Autonomy and the right to believe. One argument for believing at will is that individuals have the right to choose their beliefs, just as they have the right to make decisions about their actions and lifestyle. This view emphasizes the importance of intellectual autonomy, the freedom to form one's own beliefs without coercion or external influence. From this perspective, believing at will is seen as an exercise of personal freedom and self-determination. Just as people have the right to choose their career, relationships, and values, they should also have the right to choose what they believe, even if those beliefs are not entirely grounded in evidence. Freedom from external constraints. Another argument for believing at will is that it allows individuals to free themselves from external constraints, such as social pressures, cultural norms, and institutional authority. In some cases, choosing to believe in something contrary to societal expectations can be an act of resistance and empowerment. For example, a person living in an oppressive regime might choose to believe in the possibility of freedom and justice, even if the current reality offers little evidence for it. This belief, grounded in personal autonomy, can serve as a source of hope and motivation to work towards change. While the argument for autonomy and freedom in belief formation is compelling, it also raises questions about the limits of belief and the potential consequences of adopting beliefs that are disconnected from reality. The tension between intellectual freedom and the pursuit of truth is a central theme in the debate over believing at will. Chapter 5. The Limits of Believing at Will. Cognitive Constraints. The limits of believing at will are closely tied to the cognitive constraints that shape human belief formation. These constraints include the mind's reliance on evidence, reasoning, and psychological factors that influence belief formation. The role of cognitive biases such as confirmation bias, availability heuristic, and anchoring, play a significant role in how beliefs are formed and maintained. These biases can influence the way people process information and make decisions, often leading to distorted beliefs that are resistant to change. However, cognitive biases also highlight the limitations of believing at will. Even if someone wishes to adopt a particular belief, their cognitive biases may make it difficult to do so genuinely. For example, if someone is prone to confirmation bias, they may struggle to believe something that contradicts their existing views, regardless of their desire to change their beliefs. The impact of memory and perception. Memory and perception also impose constraints on belief formation. People rely on their memories and perceptions to form beliefs, and these cognitive processes are not always under voluntary control. For instance, if someone has a vivid memory of a traumatic event, they may find it difficult to believe that the event was not as bad as they remember, even if they wish to adopt a more positive belief. Similarly, perception is influenced by the physical world and the way the brain processes sensory information. A person cannot simply choose to perceive the world differently, and thus cannot easily choose to believe something that contradicts their sensory experiences. These cognitive constraints suggest that while people may have some influence over their beliefs, there are significant limits to how much they can control them through sheer willpower. Ethical considerations. The ethical implications of believing at will are complex and multifaceted, raising questions about the responsibility of belief, the ethics of self-deception, and the potential consequences of adopting beliefs without sufficient evidence. Responsibility for beliefs. If belief were entirely voluntary, individuals could be held accountable for their beliefs in the same way they are held accountable for their actions. However, since belief formation is largely influenced by evidence, reasoning, and cognitive processes, the extent to which people are responsible for their beliefs is a matter of debate. Ethically, there is a concern that if people were to believe at will without regard for evidence, it could lead to harmful consequences, such as the spread of misinformation, irrational decision-making, and societal polarization. Therefore, some argue that individuals have an ethical duty to ensure that their beliefs are well-founded and based on evidence. The ethics of self-deception. Believing at will can sometimes lead to self-deception, where individuals convince themselves to believe something that is not true in order to avoid discomfort or achieve a desired outcome. While self-deception can provide short-term psychological benefits, it can also lead to long-term harm, both for the individual and for others. For example, someone who deceives themselves into believing that they do not have a serious illness may avoid seeking treatment, leading to worsening health outcomes. Similarly, self-deception in the context of moral beliefs can lead to unethical behavior and a failure to recognize one's own wrongdoing. The ethics of self-deception is a complex issue, as it involves balancing the desire for psychological comfort with the need for truth and integrity. In some cases, self-deception may be seen as ethically permissible if it serves a protective function, but in others, it may be seen as harmful and dishonest. The consequences of unfounded beliefs. Believing at will without sufficient evidence can have significant consequences, both for individuals and for society. Unfounded beliefs can lead to poor decision-making, harmful behavior, and the spread of misinformation. In a society where people believe whatever they wish without regard for evidence, the pursuit of truth and knowledge would be severely compromised. For instance, if people were to believe at will in unproven medical treatments, this could lead to public health risks and a decline in trust in scientific expertise. Similarly, if people were to believe in baseless conspiracy theories, this could contribute to social division and undermine democratic processes. Ethically, the limits of believing at will suggest that individuals have a responsibility to base their beliefs on evidence and reason, rather than on mere desire or emotion. This responsibility is crucial for maintaining the integrity of belief and for promoting a society that values truth and knowledge. Chapter 6. Belief Formation in Practice. The role of evidence and reasoning. In practice, belief formation is a complex process that involves the interplay of evidence, reasoning, and psychological factors. This chapter explores how people form beliefs in real-life situations and the role that evidence and reasoning play in this process. Evaluating evidence. One of the primary ways people form beliefs is by evaluating evidence. This involves gathering information, assessing its reliability, and determining how it fits with existing knowledge. The process of evaluating evidence is often influenced by factors such as the credibility of the source, the consistency of the evidence with other known facts, and the coherence of the evidence with one's overall worldview. For example, when deciding whether to believe in the effectiveness of a new medication, a person might look at clinical trial data, consult with medical professionals, and consider their own experiences with similar treatments. The belief that the medication is effective would be based on the weight of the evidence, rather than on a simple act of will. The role of reasoning. Reasoning plays a crucial role in belief formation, as it allows individuals to draw inferences from evidence and make logical connections between different pieces of information. Reasoning can take various forms, including deductive reasoning, drawing specific conclusions from general principles, inductive reasoning, making generalizations based on specific observations, and abductive reasoning, inferring the best explanation for a set of facts. In practice, reasoning helps individuals navigate complex situations and make informed decisions. For instance, when faced with conflicting evidence, reasoning allows a person to weigh the pros and cons of each side and arrive at a reasoned belief. However, reasoning is not infallible, and people can sometimes arrive at incorrect beliefs due to cognitive biases, faulty logic, or incomplete information. Psychological influences on belief. While evidence and reasoning are important, belief formation is also influenced by a range of psychological factors, including cognitive biases, emotional states, and social influences. These factors can shape how people perceive evidence and how they form and maintain beliefs. Cognitive biases. Cognitive biases are systematic patterns of deviation from norm or rationality in judgment. They can lead to errors in reasoning and belief formation. Some common cognitive biases that influence belief formation include confirmation bias, the tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs, while ignoring or discounting evidence that contradicts those beliefs. Availability heuristic, the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events based on their availability in memory, often leading to biased beliefs based on recent or memorable experiences. Anchoring, the tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information encountered, the anchor, when making decisions, leading to biased beliefs. These cognitive biases can make it difficult for people to form accurate beliefs, even when they have access to reliable evidence and sound reasoning. Emotional states. Emotions play a significant role in belief formation, as they can influence how people perceive and interpret evidence. For example, fear can lead to heightened sensitivity to potential threats, leading to beliefs that exaggerate the likelihood of danger. Similarly, positive emotions can lead to optimism and the adoption of beliefs that align with one's desires and goals. While emotions can provide valuable insights and motivation, they can also lead to biased beliefs that are not grounded in evidence. For instance, someone who is deeply in love might choose to believe in the infallibility of their partner, despite evidence to the contrary. This belief, while emotionally comforting, may not reflect reality. Social influences. Belief formation is also shaped by social influences, including cultural norms, peer pressure, and authority figures. People often adopt beliefs that align with the views of their social group or that are endorsed by trusted authorities. This can lead to the formation of beliefs that are socially accepted but not necessarily supported by evidence. For example, in a community where a particular religious or political belief is widely accepted, individuals may adopt that belief without critically examining the evidence for it. Social influences can reinforce beliefs through mechanisms such as conformity, social reinforcement, and the desire for social acceptance. Strategies for critical thinking. Given the various factors that influence belief formation, it is important to develop strategies for critical thinking that can help individuals form well-founded beliefs based on evidence and reasoning. Questioning assumptions. One key strategy for critical thinking is to question assumptions. This involves identifying the assumptions underlying a belief and critically evaluating whether they are justified. By questioning assumptions, individuals can uncover potential biases or errors in their reasoning and arrive at more accurate beliefs. For example, someone might assume that a particular dietary supplement is effective based on anecdotal evidence. By questioning this assumption and examining the scientific evidence, they may discover that the supplement is not as effective as they initially believed. Evaluating sources. Another important strategy is to evaluate the credibility of sources. In an age of information overload, it is crucial to assess the reliability and expertise of the sources from which one obtains information. This involves considering factors such as the source's qualifications, reputation, and potential biases. For instance, when reading a news article or scientific study, individuals should consider whether the source has a history of accurate reporting, whether the information is peer-reviewed, and whether there are any conflicts of interest that might affect the credibility of the information. Engaging in reflective thinking. Reflective thinking involves taking the time to reflect on one's beliefs and the processes that led to their formation. This includes considering alternative viewpoints, analyzing the reasoning behind one's beliefs, and being open to changing one's mind in light of new evidence. Reflective thinking can help individuals avoid the pitfalls of cognitive biases and emotional influences, leading to more accurate and well-founded beliefs. It also encourages intellectual humility, the recognition that one's beliefs may be fallible and that there is always room for learning and growth. Chapter 7. The Ethics of Belief. The ethics of evidence-based belief. The ethics of belief is concerned with the moral responsibilities individuals have regarding their beliefs. One key aspect of this is the ethics of evidence-based belief, which holds that individuals have a duty to base their beliefs on adequate evidence. William Clifford's argument. Philosopher William Clifford famously argued in his essay, The Ethics of Belief, that it is wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. Clifford's argument is rooted in the idea that beliefs have consequences, both for the individual and for society, and that holding beliefs without sufficient evidence can lead to harm. For example, if a person believes in a false medical treatment based on anecdotal evidence, they may forego effective treatment and suffer as a result. Similarly, if people collectively believe in unfounded conspiracy theories, this can lead to social unrest and undermine public trust in institutions. Clifford's argument emphasizes the importance of intellectual responsibility and the need to critically evaluate evidence before forming beliefs. It also highlights the ethical implications of belief, suggesting that individuals have a moral duty to ensure that their beliefs are aligned with truth and evidence. Critiques of Clifford's argument. Critics of Clifford's argument, such as William James, have argued that there are situations where it is permissible or even necessary to believe without sufficient evidence. James contended that in cases where evidence is inconclusive and a decision must be made, individuals are justified in adopting beliefs that serve their practical needs. For instance, in matters of religious faith, where empirical evidence may be lacking, James argued that individuals have the right to believe based on personal experience, emotional needs, and the potential benefits of the belief. This view suggests that the ethics of belief must balance the pursuit of truth with the practical and emotional needs of individuals. the ethics of self-deception. Self-deception raises important ethical questions, particularly regarding the responsibility individuals have for their beliefs and the potential harm that self-deception can cause. Moral responsibility and self-deception. The ethics of self-deception revolves around the question of whether individuals are morally responsible for deceiving themselves. On one hand, self-deception can be seen as a way to avoid psychological discomfort, cope with difficult situations, or maintain a positive self-image. On the other hand, self-deception can lead to distorted beliefs, poor decision-making, and harm to oneself and others. For example, someone who deceives themselves into believing that they are not addicted to a substance may avoid seeking help and continue engaging in harmful behavior. In this case, self-deception can have serious consequences, both for the individual and for those around them. From an ethical perspective, self-deception can be seen as a failure to engage in honest self-reflection and critical thinking. It can also be viewed as a violation of the duty to seek truth and align one's beliefs with reality. However, some argue that self-deception may be ethically permissible in certain contexts, such as when it serves to protect an individual's mental health or well-being. The ethics of encouraging self-deception. Another ethical issue related to self-deception is whether it is ever acceptable to encourage or facilitate self-deception in others. This issue arises in situations where self-deception might provide comfort or motivation, such as when a terminally ill patient chooses to believe in the possibility of recovery despite the medical prognosis. While encouraging self-deception may seem compassionate in some cases, it also raises concerns about honesty, autonomy, and the potential for harm. If self-deception leads to unrealistic expectations or poor decision-making, it may ultimately cause more harm than good. Ethically, there is a need to balance the desire to protect individuals from distress with the responsibility to promote truth and informed decision-making. In some cases, it may be more ethical to gently challenge self-deceptive beliefs and help individuals confront difficult truths, rather than allowing or encouraging self-deception. Chapter 8, Conclusion. The complexity of belief. The question of whether people can believe at will is complex and multifaceted, involving philosophical, psychological, and ethical considerations. While there is some evidence to suggest that individuals can influence their beliefs to a certain extent, the process of belief formation is largely governed by factors such as evidence, reasoning, and cognitive processes. Belief as a cognitive process. Belief is fundamentally a cognitive process that is shaped by evidence, reasoning, and psychological influences. While desire and emotion can influence belief formation, they do not grant individuals full control over their beliefs. Instead, beliefs are formed through a complex interplay of factors, including the evaluation of evidence, cognitive biases, emotional states, and social influences. Ethical implications of belief. The ethics of belief emphasizes the importance of intellectual responsibility and the need to base beliefs on adequate evidence. While there may be situations where believing at will is justified for practical or emotional reasons, individuals have a moral duty to critically evaluate their beliefs and ensure that they are aligned with truth and evidence. Balancing belief and truth. Ultimately, the question of believing at will highlights the tension between the desire for personal autonomy and the pursuit of truth. While individuals may wish to believe certain things for their own comfort or benefit, the ethical and cognitive constraints on belief formation suggest that truth and evidence should remain central to the process of forming and maintaining beliefs. In conclusion, while people may have some influence over their beliefs, the extent to which they can believe at will is limited by the nature of belief itself, as well as the ethical responsibilities that come with holding and acting on beliefs. The pursuit of truth, guided by evidence and reason, remains a crucial aspect of belief formation in both personal and societal contexts.